Most barbaric ancient civilizations, brutal practices that will shock you. Life was difficult, and survival depended on cooperation, strength, and careful planning. Over time, humans discovered ways to grow crops, raise animals, and settle in one place. This change gave birth to the first true civilizations, communities so large and organized that they could support thousands of people. Among these early civilizations were Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley, and the civilizations of Mesoamerica, including the Mayans and the Aztecs. Each of these societies brought remarkable innovations, building cities, inventing writing, creating complex governments, and developing trade networks. They became the centers of knowledge, culture, and progress, setting the stage for the development of human history. Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, emerged between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This fertile land allowed people to grow surplus crops, which in turn supported larger populations and more complex social structures. Mesopotamians invented writing in the form of cuneiform, a system of symbols pressed into clay tablets. They built enormous cities like Ur and Babylon, complete with temples, palaces, and marketplaces. Life in these cities was exciting and full of opportunity for some, but it could also be harsh and unforgiving. The rulers of Mesopotamia were often considered representatives of the gods on earth, and their authority was absolute. Laws were strict, and punishments for breaking them could be severe. While the society achieved remarkable progress in science, mathematics, and architecture, it also created systems of control that sometimes relied on fear and violence. Far to the south, along the Nile River, ancient Egypt flourished. The Egyptians built incredible monuments, including the pyramids and temples, which still stand today as symbols of human ingenuity. The Nile provided fertile land for crops, ensuring that the population could grow and thrive. Egyptians developed a writing system called hieroglyphs, allowing them to record their history, religious beliefs, and daily life. They created sophisticated methods for medicine, astronomy, and engineering. Yet, beneath the grandeur of the temples and tombs, life could be harsh. Pharaohs ruled with absolute power, and the social hierarchy was rigid. Ordinary people worked long hours on farms or building projects, often under difficult conditions. While the Egyptian civilization is celebrated for its achievements, it also had strict laws and social expectations, and the gap between rulers and the common people could lead to suffering for those without privilege. In the Far East, the Indus Valley civilization thrived along the rivers that run through modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. Cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were planned with remarkable precision, including streets laid out in grids, advanced drainage systems, and public baths. People traded goods over long distances, creating a network of exchange that connected distant communities. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of sophisticated craftwork, including jewelry, pottery, and tools. Yet, despite the sophistication of their cities, the Indus people, like others, lived under rules and customs that controlled behavior. Their religious and cultural practices included rituals and ceremonies that reinforced social order. Even as they achieved great success in urban planning and trade, their civilization shows that human societies have always balanced innovation with regulation, often in ways that could be strict or severe. Across the ocean, in the Americas, the Mayan and Aztec civilizations developed in the dense jungles and highlands of Mesoamerica. The Mayans were known for their advanced knowledge of astronomy and mathematics, creating calendars that tracked the movements of the stars with incredible accuracy. They built grand cities with towering temples and plazas, where priests and rulers conducted ceremonies that maintained the social and religious order. The Aztecs, who rose to power later, built a vast empire centered in what is now Mexico City. They constructed magnificent temples, marketplaces, and canals, and their society was highly organized, with strict laws and a clear social hierarchy. The achievements of these civilizations were remarkable, yet they were also intertwined with practices that modern people find shocking. Rituals, ceremonies, and strict enforcement of rules were part of everyday life, shaping the behavior of the population and reinforcing the power of the rulers. As these civilizations grew, so did the complexity of their societies. With large populations came the need for laws, governance, and systems of control. Leaders sought to maintain order and stability, but their methods were not always gentle. Some societies used fear and intimidation to ensure obedience, while others incorporated religious beliefs to justify harsh measures. What might seem cruel to modern eyes was often seen as necessary in the context of the time. People believed that the gods demanded certain actions, that punishment was required for wrongdoing, and that rituals reinforced the balance of the world. In this way, early civilizations were a mix of incredible achievement and human suffering, progress and brutality, hope and fear. In Mesopotamia, the law code of Hammurabi is a famous example of how order was maintained. This code, carved into stone, listed hundreds of laws covering property, trade, family, and crime. Some punishments were severe, including fines, physical punishment, and even death, depending on the offense. These laws were designed to create a sense of justice and accountability, but they also reflected the unequal power between rulers and ordinary people. While some people benefited from the protections of the law, others lived under constant threat of harsh punishment. The code demonstrates that even as societies became more organized and sophisticated, the desire to control human behavior could lead to extreme measures. In Egypt, religion and governance were deeply intertwined. The pharaohs were considered divine, chosen by the gods to rule the land. Temples and ceremonies reinforced their authority, and priests played a central role in daily life. Ordinary Egyptians participated in festivals, made offerings, and followed the instructions of their rulers. Life was structured and predictable, but it could also be harsh for those at the lower levels of society. Laborers worked on massive construction projects, sometimes under difficult and dangerous conditions. Children learned from a young age to respect hierarchy, obey rules, and participate in the rituals that maintained social order. While these practices contributed to the stability and longevity of Egyptian civilization, they also reveal how much control rulers had over the lives of their people. The civilizations of Mesoamerica provide further examples of the dual nature of human progress and brutality. The Mayans celebrated knowledge, art, and astronomy, but their religious rituals could involve personal sacrifice and offerings to the gods. The Aztecs built a vast empire, and their rulers enforced laws and customs with strict discipline. In both cases, individuals were part of a larger system that demanded obedience and participation in social and religious life. Life in these civilizations was rich with culture, art, and knowledge, but it was also shaped by rules, expectations, and rituals that could be difficult or frightening for ordinary people. The stories of these civilizations show how human societies, even in their greatest achievements, often required sacrifices, discipline, and strict adherence to social norms. Despite the challenges and dangers, people in these civilizations developed remarkable skills and knowledge. They created writing systems, built monuments that still stand today, developed mathematical and astronomical systems, and engaged in trade that connected distant lands. These achievements required cooperation, innovation, and intelligence, demonstrating the incredible potential of human societies. At the same time, the darker aspects of these civilizations, strict laws, harsh punishments, and ritual practices, remind us that human history is a mixture of light and shadow. Progress often came with a cost, and the lives of ordinary people were shaped by forces beyond their control. In telling the story of early civilizations, it is important to remember the human side of history. Behind every law, every ritual, and every monument, there were real people living their lives, struggling to survive, and trying to find meaning in a complex world. Some experienced great privilege, while others faced hardship and danger. Some participated willingly in rituals and ceremonies, while others were caught against their will. By looking at these societies in detail, we gain a clearer understanding of how human progress is intertwined with human suffering, how the desire for order and knowledge can coexist with fear and cruelty, and how the stories of the past continue to shape our understanding of humanity today. As Part 1 comes to a close, readers are left with a vivid picture of the early civilizations of the world, their towering cities, their brilliant achievements, and their complex social structures. Yet behind the beauty and innovation lies a shadow, a reminder that human societies have always struggled with the balance between progress and power, freedom and control, hope and fear. These ancient civilizations were the first to demonstrate both the incredible potential and the dark side of human society, setting the stage for the stories of ritual, punishment, and brutality that will be explored in the next chapters. The rise of civilization brought light to the world, but it also revealed the human capacity for strict control and harsh practices, showing that the story of humanity is never simple, never purely good, and never free from the consequences of its own choices. In the vast reaches of ancient history, the lives of ordinary people were often shaped not only by work, family, and governance, but also by powerful religious and cultural rituals. These rituals were not just ceremonies for celebration. In many civilizations, they were deeply tied to the idea of life, death, and the will of the gods. What might seem extreme or shocking to modern readers was, for people at the time, a way of ensuring survival, maintaining balance in the universe, or honoring forces beyond human control. Across the world, from the jungles of Mesoamerica to the fertile lands of the Nile, rituals and sacrifices became central to society, shaping behavior, beliefs, and the course of history. Among the most famous examples of ritual sacrifice are the practices of the Aztec civilization. The Aztecs built one of the most powerful empires in the Americas, centered in the city of Tenochtitlan. Their society was highly organized, with a rigid hierarchy that placed the emperor at the top and commoners at the base. Religion played a central role in their daily life, and the gods were believed to control everything from the rising of the sun to the success of crops and the health of the people. The Aztecs believed that the gods required nourishment in the form of human blood, and failure to provide it could lead to disaster. Sacrifices were performed in grand temples, often on elevated platforms, visible to large crowds of citizens. These events were elaborate and highly ritualized, with priests performing precise ceremonies, chanting prayers, and following strict rules that had been passed down for generations. While the idea of taking a human life is disturbing to modern eyes, in the Aztec worldview, it was a sacred duty and an essential part of maintaining cosmic order. The victims of Aztec sacrifices were often prisoners of war, chosen because their capture represented success in battle and the fulfillment of religious obligations. Others might be volunteers, individuals who accepted their role as an offering to the gods. The ceremonies themselves could involve various methods, including the symbolic offering of hearts, which were believed to provide the gods with life force. These rituals were not random acts of violence. They followed established traditions and were carried out with precision and ceremony. Ordinary citizens attended these events, learning lessons about the power of the gods, the importance of duty, and the consequences of failing to maintain social and cosmic balance. The rituals reinforced the structure of society, teaching obedience and respect, even in the face of fear. Far away in the jungles and cities of the Maya civilization, similar practices were observed, though in different forms. The Mayans were advanced in mathematics, astronomy, and architecture, building cities that aligned with celestial events, and constructing pyramids and observatories that reflected their sophisticated knowledge of the cosmos. Religion was central to Mayan life, and they believed that the gods communicated through signs in the sky and through human actions on earth. Rituals often involved offerings to the gods, including food, precious objects, and blood. Nobles and priests sometimes practiced bloodletting, in which they would pierce or cut themselves to offer their blood to the gods. This was seen as a way to maintain balance, seek guidance, or show devotion. Children were occasionally included in these ceremonies, chosen for their perceived purity and connection to the divine. While this is a concept difficult to understand today, in the Mayan worldview, these acts were sacred, necessary, and a form of devotion that ensured the well-being of the community. In Mesopotamia, rituals were deeply entwined with the authority of kings and priests. Cities like Babylon and Ur were centers of power where rulers claimed divine favor. Religious ceremonies included offerings, prayers, and sometimes sacrifices intended to appease gods and secure their protection. Temples were the heart of the city, where priests interpreted signs from the divine and guided citizens in the proper observance of rituals. The Mesopotamians believed that failing to honor the gods could bring misfortune, such as famine, disease, or war. Sacrifices, whether of animals or symbolic representations, were a way to maintain favor and stability. These rituals were public, reinforcing social order and demonstrating the power of religion in daily life. Ordinary people, whether farmers, merchants, or laborers, participated in festivals, bringing food or goods as offerings. Through these shared ceremonies, the society was bound together, and the authority of rulers and priests was strengthened. In Egypt, religion and ritual were equally central, though often expressed through elaborate ceremonies that combined art, architecture, and tradition. Pharaohs were considered divine, chosen by the gods to govern the land and maintain order. Temples were constructed to honor these deities, and priests performed rituals to ensure the prosperity of the kingdom. Some rituals included symbolic offerings, which could involve food, animals, or valuable items. The Egyptians also practiced mummification, a complex ritual designed to prepare the dead for the afterlife, ensuring that the soul would continue its journey and that the family and community remained protected. While less violent than some practices elsewhere, these rituals were no less important or demanding, requiring discipline, expertise, and deep religious devotion. Even in Europe, among the Celtic and Norse peoples, ritual practices had significant influence. The Celts, for example, performed ceremonies in sacred groves, offering gifts to gods and spirits, sometimes including animals and symbolic human effigies. The Norse, in their early history, celebrated festivals and rites that involved sacrifices to appease gods like Odin and Thor. These acts were seen as essential for maintaining balance, gaining favor in battle, or ensuring prosperity in farming and trade. The rituals were public and participatory, drawing communities together and reinforcing shared beliefs. While these practices may seem unusual to modern readers, they played a central role in shaping values, social order, and the cultural identity of the people. Across the ancient world, the idea of sacrifice, whether of blood, animals, or symbolic objects, was tied to the belief that humans must interact with forces beyond their control. Life was fragile, and people sought ways to influence nature, secure the favor of gods, and maintain harmony in their communities. The rituals were elaborate, structured, and often frightening to witness, but they were also deeply meaningful to those involved. They demonstrated devotion, courage, and the willingness to accept responsibility for the greater good. In this way, ritual sacrifice was not merely a form of brutality. It was a tool for teaching, guiding, and sustaining civilizations. In these societies, the experience of ordinary people varied greatly depending on their social status, role in the ritual, and the particular customs of their civilization. For some, participating in ceremonies was a mark of honor, a chance to serve the gods and the community. For others, being chosen as a victim or participant in a sacrifice was a terrifying reality that highlighted the power of the state or religious authority. Families, friends, and neighbors would often witness these events, sharing in the emotional intensity, learning lessons about obedience, and reinforcing the norms of the society. The rituals were communal experiences, shaping beliefs and behaviors across generations. Despite the fear and intensity surrounding these rituals, they also fostered creativity, artistry, and cultural richness. Temples, pyramids, and ceremonial platforms were built with intricate designs, reflecting religious symbolism and cultural values. Clothing, music, and storytelling were often intertwined with ritual events, creating performances that educated, entertained, and inspired the population. Artists, architects, and craftsmen contributed to the rituals, leaving behind evidence of skill and imagination that continues to impress modern audiences. These creations demonstrate that even in the context of practices that may seem harsh today, civilizations nurtured innovation, beauty, and knowledge. Rituals and sacrifices also reflected the human desire to understand and influence the world. Ancient peoples observed the cycles of the sun and moon, the movement of stars, and the patterns of seasons. They believed that by performing ceremonies and offering gifts to the gods, they could secure protection, health, and prosperity. These practices were rooted in observation, logic, and cultural wisdom, even if the methods and beliefs differ from those of modern society. Through ritual, people sought to create order from uncertainty, control from chaos, and meaning from the mysteries of life. As time passed, some of these rituals evolved, becoming more symbolic and less physically extreme, while others persisted for centuries, influencing generations. The memory of these practices lives on in the monuments, writings, and oral traditions left behind by ancient civilizations. Studying these rituals provides a window into the values, fears, and priorities of societies long gone. It reveals how deeply human life has been intertwined with belief, devotion, and the attempt to connect with something greater than oneself. It also shows that what may seem shocking or extreme today was, for people at the time, a deeply meaningful part of life, essential to survival, society, and culture. In telling the stories of ritual and sacrifice, it is important to remember the humanity behind the events. These were not simply acts of cruelty. They were complex social and religious practices with rules, traditions, and purposes. Victims, participants, and observers all played roles in maintaining the structure of their societies. Families might grieve, celebrate, or learn through these experiences, and communities were united in shared understanding of the world. Through these stories, modern readers can gain insight into the fears, hopes, and values that guided civilizations, revealing the ways humans have always sought meaning in life and death. Part 2 closes with a vivid image of these ancient societies as places of both wonder and intensity. The pyramids, temples, and ceremonial platforms stand as monuments to human ingenuity and belief. The rituals, though shocking to modern sensibilities, were woven into the fabric of daily life, shaping culture, morality, and social order. As the story moves forward, the focus will shift to the legal systems, punishments, and social controls that further reveal the ways ancient civilizations balanced progress with power, order with fear, and innovation with discipline. By exploring these aspects, readers will gain a full picture of the human experience in early societies, seeing both the brilliance and the harsh realities that defined life thousands of years ago. As civilizations grew larger and more complex, they faced a new challenge: maintaining order among increasingly diverse populations. With larger cities, more trade, and growing social hierarchies, the simple rules of small communities were no longer sufficient. Leaders needed systems to govern behavior, enforce laws, and punish those who broke rules. In many early civilizations, this led to legal codes and punishments that were strict, harsh, and sometimes terrifying. To ensure obedience and respect, rulers often relied on fear, making examples of those who defied authority. Life in these societies was shaped not only by work, religion, and culture, but also by the constant awareness that breaking the law could have serious, even deadly, consequences. In Mesopotamia, one of the earliest known law codes, created by King Hammurabi of Babylon around 1750 BCE, illustrates the combination of order, justice, and severity. This code was inscribed on large stone pillars and placed in public spaces for all to see. It contained hundreds of laws covering aspects of daily life, including trade, property, family, and labor. Each law was specific and often paired with a prescribed punishment. Some punishments seem extreme to modern readers. For example, if a person caused the death of another's child, they might be put to death themselves. If someone stole property, the punishment could range from fines to physical mutilation. The principle of an eye for an eye guided many of these laws, meaning the punishment often mirrored the offense. While harsh, the code reflected a desire to create order and predictability in a rapidly growing society, ensuring that citizens understood the consequences of their actions. In ancient Egypt, law and punishment were closely tied to religion and the authority of the pharaoh. The pharaoh was considered divine, and his word was law. Officials and scribes maintained records of transactions, disputes, and criminal cases. Punishments were designed not only to deter crime, but also to maintain the harmony of the community and the favor of the gods. For serious offenses, the consequences could include forced labor, imprisonment, or even execution. While the law sometimes allowed for mercy or compensation, the system emphasized obedience and respect for hierarchy. The fear of punishment reinforced social order and kept citizens aligned with the expectations of their rulers. Even daily life was shaped by these laws, as people were careful to follow rules in trade, work, and family matters, knowing that disobedience could lead to severe consequences. In Rome, law and punishment were central to the functioning of the empire. The Romans developed an extensive legal system, including written codes, courts, and judges. For minor offenses, punishments could include fines, public shaming, or temporary imprisonment. For serious crimes such as murder, rebellion, or treason, punishments could be extreme. One of the most infamous Roman punishments was crucifixion, used primarily for slaves, rebels, and criminals who threatened the state. Victims were tied or nailed to large wooden crosses and left to die in public view. Crucifixion was intended not only to punish the offender, but also to serve as a warning to the population, demonstrating the power of the state and the consequences of defiance. Public executions were often attended by crowds, reinforcing fear and obedience while emphasizing the authority of rulers and the law. In Europe, among the Celtic and Viking societies, punishments were also designed to maintain order and uphold social norms. The Celts valued honor, loyalty, and community, and those who violated the laws faced severe consequences. Theft, betrayal, or disrespect could result in fines, exile, or physical punishment. Vikings, known for their warrior culture, relied on strict codes of behavior within their communities. Offenders might face public shaming, corporal punishment, or execution, depending on the severity of the crime. In these societies, punishments were often carried out in public, ensuring that others witnessed the consequences and learned to respect social rules. The use of fear and example was central to maintaining cohesion in small, yet often turbulent, communities. In China, during the Qin dynasty around 221 BCE, the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, established a strict legalist system. Laws were clear, detailed, and strictly enforced. Punishments could include flogging, forced labor, or death for offenses ranging from theft to disobedience. The emperor believed that strict rules were essential to maintaining order in a vast empire. Even minor violations were taken seriously, as the stability of society depended on obedience to the law. Legalism emphasized that human nature was inherently flawed, so external control through rules and punishments was necessary to prevent chaos. This approach reinforced the power of the state and instilled a culture of fear that kept citizens disciplined and compliant. Torture was another tool used by rulers and authorities in many ancient civilizations. While today it is seen as cruel and unacceptable, in the past, it was considered a legitimate method to obtain confessions, enforce laws, or punish those deemed dangerous. In Mesopotamia and Rome, interrogation often involved painful techniques designed to elicit truth or submission. The use of torture reflected the belief that maintaining order and protecting the community justified extreme measures. In some cases, accused criminals or enemies of the state were forced to endure pain to demonstrate guilt, reinforce the authority of rulers, or satisfy public expectation for justice. The experience of torture, while terrifying, was intertwined with legal systems and social norms, shaping the lives of ordinary people who lived under constant awareness of potential consequences. Social hierarchy also played a role in determining punishments. In many civilizations, nobles, priests, or officials could sometimes escape the harshest consequences, while common people, slaves, and prisoners were more likely to face severe punishments. This disparity reinforced social divisions and reminded lower-status individuals of their place in society. In some cultures, public displays of punishment were designed not only to discipline the guilty, but also to educate the public, teaching them the rules of conduct and the dangers of disobedience. The visibility of punishment, whether through execution, exile, or corporal penalty, created a culture where fear and respect for authority coexisted, shaping behavior in powerful ways. Even in societies that valued justice, fairness, or compensation, punishments could be strikingly severe. In Babylon, for example, punishments were often exacting and literal, reflecting the principle that the penalty should match the crime. In Rome, laws were written to protect the interests of the state and the elite, often at the expense of ordinary citizens. In Egypt, the pharaoh's officials acted as both enforcers and judges, maintaining order with the authority of divine sanction. Across cultures, the message was consistent. Laws exist to maintain society, and violations carry consequences that must be visible and memorable. Citizens learned early to respect authority, comply with rules, and understand the risks of defiance. Punishments also served as tools of political power. Leaders who enforced strict rules and harsh penalties demonstrated their strength, discouraging rebellion or dissent. Public executions, displays of torture, and severe penalties for minor infractions were often as much about controlling the population as they were about administering justice. In this sense, punishment was both practical and symbolic. It reminded citizens that rulers were powerful, that the law was absolute, and that failure to follow societal norms could be disastrous. This combination of fear, authority, and discipline was a hallmark of governance in many ancient civilizations. Despite the severity of punishments, These systems also contributed to stability and continuity. By establishing clear rules and consequences, rulers were able to maintain order in large and complex societies. Citizens understood expectations and the risks of wrongdoing, which allowed for trade, governance, and cultural development to flourish. While harsh by modern standards, these measures reflected a pragmatic approach to managing human behavior in environments where resources were limited, populations were growing, and social tensions were ever present. The stories of individuals living under these legal systems reveal both courage and vulnerability. Citizens had to navigate a world where one misstep could have dire consequences. Families might suffer the loss of a member due to legal punishment or political intrigue. Communities witnessed the enforcement of laws and learned to internalize social norms through observation and experience. Ordinary people became familiar with fear as a tool of control, understanding that obedience was often essential for survival. Yet, even in these challenging circumstances, societies thrived, demonstrating the resilience and adaptability of human communities under strict governance. In looking at ancient legal systems and punishments, it is clear that human societies have always sought balance between freedom and control, individual rights and societal needs. The methods used may seem harsh, even barbaric to modern readers, but they were part of the effort to create stability, protect resources, and maintain social cohesion. These practices also highlight the ways in which rulers and authorities wielded power, using law and punishment as tools to shape behavior, reinforce hierarchy, and protect the interests of the state or community. Part 3 closes with a vivid understanding of life under the laws of ancient civilizations. The systems of justice, punishments, and torture were complex and deeply intertwined with culture, religion, and governance. They served as reminders of authority, lessons in obedience, and methods of maintaining order. While the practices may shock modern sensibilities, they were integral to the functioning of societies that faced constant challenges of growth, conflict, and survival. These systems shaped generations, influenced cultural norms, and left a lasting mark on human history. As the story moves forward into Part 4, the focus will shift to warfare, conquest, and the mass atrocities that accompanied the expansion of empires, revealing another dimension of human ambition, power, and brutality. Throughout history, the rise and fall of civilizations have often been marked by war and conquest. As societies grew larger, wealthier, and more powerful, the competition for land, resources, and influence intensified. Armies marched across vast territories, empires expanded, and battles became both tools of survival and instruments of political power. In ancient times, warfare was not only a way to acquire resources but also a demonstration of strength, a method to instill fear, and a way to enforce obedience. While victories brought glory and prosperity to rulers and empires, the consequences for ordinary people were often devastating, with destruction, displacement, and death as unavoidable companions of conquest. In Mesopotamia, one of the earliest known civilizations, warfare was a constant reality. Cities such as Ur, Babylon, and Assyria fought repeatedly for control over fertile lands and trade routes. The Assyrians, in particular, gained a reputation for their military prowess and strict enforcement of authority. Assyrian kings led armies equipped with iron weapons, chariots, and highly trained soldiers. Conquered cities were often subjected to harsh treatment to discourage rebellion. Historical records describe mass deportations, forced labor, and public displays of punishment for those who resisted. By showcasing the consequences of defiance, the Assyrians maintained control over a vast and diverse empire. Ordinary citizens lived with the constant awareness that war could bring sudden upheaval, forcing families to flee, lose property, or face violence. In ancient Egypt, warfare played a significant role in maintaining borders and securing resources. Egyptian pharaohs led armies to protect the Nile Valley and expand their influence into neighboring regions. Battles were fought with chariots, bows, and infantry, and the outcomes often determined the prosperity of entire regions. While some conflicts were defensive, others were aimed at expanding the reach of the empire, securing trade routes, or acquiring tribute from neighboring peoples. Conquered populations were sometimes incorporated into Egyptian society, providing labor or tribute, but rebellions were met with strict punishment. Temples and monuments commemorated victories, blending religious and political messaging to reinforce the pharaoh's authority. Citizens understood that warfare was an integral part of life, shaping not only politics but also daily experiences and societal expectations. In the Americas, the Aztec Empire relied on military conquest to maintain and expand its influence. The Aztecs built a sophisticated army and strategic alliances, often demanding tribute from surrounding city-states. Conquered peoples were incorporated into the empire, but compliance was enforced through military might and the threat of ritualized punishment. Warfare was not merely a political or economic tool. It was also closely linked to religious practices. Captured warriors might be used in ceremonial sacrifices, emphasizing the connection between conquest, obedience, and devotion to the gods. For ordinary citizens, warfare represented both pride in the achievements of their empire and fear of the consequences for those who opposed it. The cycle of conquest, tribute, and ritualized punishment reinforced social order while expanding the empire's wealth and influence. In China, the unification of the country under Qin Shi Huang and later dynasties was achieved through military campaigns and strict enforcement of authority. The Qin army was highly organized, disciplined, and well-equipped, capable of conquering rival states and securing borders. Conquered populations were often subjected to forced labor, conscription, and strict control, ensuring compliance and integration into the growing empire. The Great Wall of China, begun during the Qin dynasty, serves as a lasting testament to the importance of defense and control in the face of external threats. Ordinary people, whether farmers, laborers, or soldiers, experienced the demands of warfare directly, through service, conscription, or the consequences of living in contested regions. Military strength was central to the survival and stability of the empire, and obedience was essential to avoid the harsh punishments imposed on those who resisted. In Europe, the Celtic tribes and the Norse people also experienced the consequences of war and conquest. Celts often engaged in battles over territory, resources, and honor, using swords, spears, and chariots. Leaders relied on warriors to protect their lands and expand influence, and those who failed in battle risked punishment or loss of status. Similarly, the Vikings were famous for their raids, conquests, and maritime expeditions. Viking warriors traveled across rivers and seas to attack settlements, secure resources, and demonstrate power. For the communities they targeted, these raids could bring devastation, displacement, and loss of life. The fear of external attacks shaped the organization of societies, prompting defensive strategies, alliances, and cultural adaptations. Ordinary citizens were deeply affected, learning resilience and vigilance as essential traits for survival in a world dominated by conflict. One of the most striking aspects of ancient warfare was the use of mass atrocities and terror tactics to maintain control. Conquerors often displayed the consequences of resistance publicly to discourage rebellion. The Assyrians, for example, were known to display the heads of defeated enemies or leave cities in ruins to send a clear message to others. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs used captured warriors in ritual sacrifices, linking military conquest to religious devotion and reinforcing the power of the state. These acts, while shocking to modern sensibilities, were calculated measures to ensure compliance, strengthen authority, and instill fear. The psychological impact of these actions was significant, shaping behavior and reinforcing the hierarchical structure of societies. The human experience of warfare in ancient civilizations was complex and varied. Soldiers endured training, battle, and injury, facing the constant risk of death. Civilians faced displacement, destruction of property, and the threat of violence from invading armies. Families might be separated, with men conscripted into military service and women and children forced to flee or endure occupation. Yet, despite the dangers, warfare also brought opportunities for recognition, advancement, and participation in the larger story of their civilization. Young men could gain prestige through military achievement, while leaders reinforced their authority and demonstrated their capability to protect and expand their societies. War, therefore, was both a source of fear and a driver of social mobility, creating tension, opportunity, and drama in the lives of ordinary people. Another important aspect of ancient warfare was the strategic and technological innovations that civilizations developed to gain advantage. Mesopotamian armies used chariots and organized formations to outmaneuver opponents. Egyptian armies employed advanced archery, chariots, and coordinated infantry attacks. The Vikings developed longships that allowed rapid, far-reaching raids across rivers and seas. The Aztecs built complex city defenses and trained warriors in disciplined military formations. These innovations reflect the intelligence, creativity, and adaptability of human societies, even in the context of violent conflict. They also demonstrate that warfare was not only about brute force, but also about planning, strategy, and the ability to understand and outwit opponents. While leaders and soldiers often receive the most attention in histories of warfare, ordinary citizens played crucial roles in sustaining empires and armies. Farmers produced food to feed armies, craftsmen created weapons and armor, and laborers built infrastructure such as walls, roads, and forts. These contributions were essential to the success of military campaigns, yet they often came at great personal cost. Conscription, forced labor, and the demands of wartime production placed heavy burdens on populations, creating social tension and sometimes leading to rebellion or unrest. The experiences of ordinary people reveal that the consequences of conquest were not limited to the battlefield, but extended into every aspect of daily life. The consequences of warfare extended beyond immediate destruction. Conquered populations were often assimilated into the empire through taxation, tribute, or labor, sometimes losing autonomy and cultural identity. Cities were rebuilt, societies reorganized, and social hierarchies enforced to ensure compliance. The experiences of conquered peoples highlight the human cost of empire building, demonstrating how power, ambition, and survival often came at the expense of freedom and security. Yet these interactions also facilitated cultural exchange, the spread of knowledge, and the blending of traditions, leaving a lasting impact on history. Despite the destruction and hardship, warfare also shaped the identities of civilizations. Victories brought prestige, solidified leadership, and expanded influence, allowing societies to flourish economically and culturally. The lessons learned from conflict, about strategy, organization, and human resilience, shaped governance, law, and military practice for generations. In this way, warfare was a driver of both destruction and development, highlighting the dual nature of human societies as capable of both creativity and violence, organization and chaos. Part 4 closes with a powerful understanding of the impact of warfare and conquest on ancient civilizations. Armies marched, empires expanded, and battles shaped the fate of millions of people. Leaders demonstrated power, soldiers endured hardship, and civilians navigated fear and disruption. While the physical and psychological consequences of conflict were often harsh, these experiences also contributed to cultural development, social organization, and the spread of ideas. Warfare, conquest, and mass atrocities reveal another dimension of human history, one that shows both the capacity for brutality and the resilience of societies facing extraordinary challenges. As the story moves forward into Part 5, the focus will shift to reflection, legacy, and the lessons that modern society can learn from the extraordinary and often shocking experiences of the past. As the centuries passed, the civilizations of the ancient world left behind remarkable achievements, astonishing monuments, and extraordinary knowledge. Yet alongside these accomplishments lies a shadow, the memory of practices that were harsh, strict, and often brutal. Sacrifices, punishments, wars, and conquests shaped the lives of countless individuals, leaving deep marks on societies and cultures. Looking back at these events allows modern readers to understand the complexity of human history, and to see that progress has always been accompanied by struggle, fear, and difficult moral choices. The story of humanity is one of both brilliance and darkness, and examining the past provides insights into our present and guidance for the future. The legacy of ancient civilizations is most visible in their remarkable creations. The pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, and the temples of Mesoamerica stand as monuments to human ingenuity, skill, and ambition. These structures required not only labor and resources, but also organization, planning, and technical knowledge. They were built to honor gods, celebrate rulers, or demonstrate power, and they continue to fascinate people today. Similarly, the development of writing systems, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine in these societies shows that humans have always sought knowledge and understanding. The achievements of these civilizations remind us of the potential for human creativity and progress, even in times when daily life could be harsh or dangerous. However, the accomplishments of these civilizations were inseparable from the social and cultural practices that maintained order and authority. Rituals, sacrifices, and religious ceremonies, while meaningful within their cultural context, often involved fear, pain, and death. Legal codes and punishments, designed to protect society and ensure obedience, could be severe, affecting the lives of ordinary people in profound ways. Warfare and conquest brought destruction, displacement, and loss of life, even as they expanded empires and facilitated cultural exchange. The legacy of these practices is complex. They demonstrate the ingenuity and organization of civilizations, but they also reveal the ways in which power, control, and survival shaped human behavior. Studying these practices helps modern readers understand the universality of certain human experiences. Fear, loyalty, ambition, and devotion were central to life in all ancient societies. People sought to protect themselves and their communities, to honor higher powers, and to achieve status and security. Leaders used fear and authority to maintain order, while ordinary people adapted to systems of law, ritual, and custom. These dynamics are not unique to the past. They continue to influence human societies today. By examining the past, we see patterns of behavior, governance, and cultural development that shed light on contemporary life, reminding us that the human desire for stability, understanding, and control has deep roots. The lessons of history extend beyond knowledge of events and practices. They also provide moral and ethical reflection. Modern readers may find some ancient practices shocking, cruel, or unjust. Human sacrifice, public execution, and mass violence highlight the extremes of behavior that societies once normalized. Yet, by examining these practices, we can ask important questions about the relationship between power and morality. Why did people accept certain actions as necessary? How did belief systems and social structures shape ethical standards? What are the consequences of authority left unchecked? These questions remain relevant, encouraging reflection on the responsibilities of leaders and the values of communities in any era. Another important aspect of reflection is understanding the human cost of progress. Monuments, cities, and empires were built not only with innovation, but also with labor, sacrifice, and often suffering. Farmers, laborers, and soldiers contributed to these achievements while enduring hardships imposed by laws, rituals, or warfare. Families experienced loss, displacement, or fear, yet they continued to participate in the life of their societies. This duality, achievement and suffering, illustrates that human progress has never been simple or without consequence. Recognizing the complexity of the past allows us to appreciate the resilience and adaptability of individuals who lived under challenging conditions. The study of ancient civilizations also demonstrates the enduring influence of cultural and technological innovations. Many legal systems, architectural techniques, agricultural practices, and methods of governance developed in antiquity continue to inform modern societies. For example, writing systems allowed for record keeping, communication, and the preservation of knowledge, enabling civilizations to pass information across generations. Engineering and architectural innovations influenced later construction and urban planning. The desire to understand the world through observation, mathematics, and astronomy laid the groundwork for scientific inquiry. In this way, even societies with harsh or brutal practices contributed to the long-term development of human knowledge and capability. Reflection also invites us to consider the consequences of unchecked power. In many ancient civilizations, rulers wielded absolute authority, using religion, law, and military force to maintain control. While this allowed for efficient governance and large-scale achievements, it also created opportunities for abuse and injustice. The lives of ordinary citizens were often shaped by decisions beyond their control, reminding us of the importance of accountability, fairness, and balance in leadership. By learning from the past, modern societies can recognize the dangers of concentrated power and the need to protect the rights and well-being of individuals within communities. In addition to governance and law, warfare provides lessons about the human cost of ambition and conflict. Empires expanded through conquest, often leaving devastation in their wake. Soldiers faced danger, civilians suffered displacement, and entire cities were sometimes destroyed. These experiences reveal the high stakes of human competition and the consequences of pursuing power without consideration of its impact on society. Yet, warfare also facilitated cultural exchange, trade, and the spread of ideas, showing that even in conflict, human creativity and adaptability could flourish. Understanding these dynamics helps us recognize the complexity of history and the interplay between destruction and development. The study of rituals and religious practices provides further insight into human psychology, belief, and culture. Sacrifices, ceremonies, and offerings, while often harsh, were meaningful to those who participated. They provided structure, reinforced social norms, and connected people to larger cosmic or divine systems. These practices illustrate the universal human desire to find meaning in life, seek protection, and maintain community cohesion. They also remind us that what may seem extreme today was often interpreted as essential, sacred, or moral within the cultural context of the time. By examining these practices, we gain a deeper understanding of the values, fears, and motivations that shaped human societies across time and place. Another lesson from the past is the importance of empathy and understanding. Recognizing the hardships and challenges faced by people in ancient civilizations allows us to appreciate their resilience, courage, and ingenuity. Families, workers, and ordinary citizens lived in environments shaped by law, religion, and warfare, navigating complex social structures while contributing to the survival and success of their communities. Their stories remind us that history is not only about rulers, armies, or monuments, but also about the human experiences behind these events. By empathizing with the lives of people long gone, we can connect with the continuity of human experience across millennia. The reflection on ancient civilizations also highlights the importance of learning from mistakes and successes alike. Societies that relied heavily on fear, coercion, and extreme punishment may have achieved short-term order, but they also experienced resistance, rebellion, and instability. Systems that balanced authority with fairness, innovation with care for citizens, and power with accountability were more likely to endure and leave a positive legacy. These patterns provide lessons for modern governance, social organization, and ethical decision-making. By studying the past, we can better understand the principles that contribute to sustainable, humane, and prosperous societies. Finally, reflection allows us to recognize the enduring fascination with ancient civilizations. People continue to study, visit, and learn from the monuments, texts, and artifacts left behind. The pyramids, ziggurats, temples, and palaces evoke awe and admiration, while the stories of ritual, law, and conquest remind us of the complexities of human nature. These civilizations were not perfect. They were filled with brilliance, creativity, fear, and suffering. Yet their legacy endures, offering lessons about human potential, morality, resilience, and the consequences of our choices. By engaging with these stories, we connect with the past, gain perspective on the present, and consider how we might shape the future. Part 5 closes with the realization that history is a mirror, reflecting both the highest achievements and the deepest challenges of human society. The civilizations of Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mesoamerica, China, and Europe demonstrate that progress and brutality often coexist, that human creativity and cruelty are intertwined, and that lessons from the past are essential for understanding the present. By examining rituals, laws, warfare, and daily life, we see how people navigated complex worlds, balancing fear and hope, obedience and innovation, survival and aspiration. These reflections remind us that history is not only about what was built or conquered, but also about the human experiences, choices, and consequences that continue to shape our world today. Understanding the legacy of ancient civilizations encourages us to value knowledge, empathy, justice, and the careful exercise of power, ensuring that the lessons of the past guide us toward a more informed, compassionate, and thoughtful future.